Good afternoon and welcome to PWN Global's Entrepreneurship session on cultivating your business with creative resource management. We've got two great speakers today. Tahminae Madani is herself an entrepreneur and her career spans 17 years of leading international teams in the internet financial services industry. Tahminae has been a member since 2014 and I do beg your pardon, 2004, and she is the leader, or was the leader, of our Paris Entrepreneur Club Forum between 2005 and 2008. So she has a wealth of experience around entrepreneurial activity and how you can maximize your resources, even if they're very limited. Also joining Tahminae today, we have Professor Olivier Basso, and Olivier is an expert in entrepreneurial leadership. He's written numerous books on the topic and he's delivered coaching for entrepreneurs and for corporates alike. So we'll have some really interesting, insightful information from him. For the purpose of the people on the call is being recorded today. And to ensure that we have good call quality, I have muted everybody. If you do want to add to the conversation, please use the chatter button that appears on the right-hand side of your screen in the GoToMeeting panel. Without further ado, I'm going to pass you over to Tahminae.
Okay, thank you, Rebecca. And I'm just going to double check the technology. You can see the presentation on the screen all right?
Yes, I can see it. I can see it, yes. Sorry, I'd muted myself.
Okay. So, let's see. Hang on a second. I'm not able to manipulate it. Oh, yes, I can. Okay, right. So, good morning, everybody. Hello.
Good morning, everybody. It's Olivier speaking.
Thanks so much for joining us today. One of the keys to entrepreneurial success is optimizing limited resources to take advantage of identified business opportunities. And today we're going to walk through how to do that and also give you concrete examples based on a case study. And the easiest thing to do was to use my business. And a little anecdote is that when I launched my business back in 2004, one of the first seminars on entrepreneurship I attended was run by Olivier, and he talked about managing resources. So it's really fun now to come back and get back into contact with him and just talk about how the lessons he had shared with me way back then were incredibly relevant and helped me immensely over the 10 years of building and running my business. So today we're going to be covering what is an entrepreneur, a little bit of a discussion on that, a brief overview of France Home Finance, which is my company, just so that you can put the examples that we give into context. I'll explain a little bit my business model. And then during the discussion, we'll talk about topics such as sharing resources with third parties to expand your reach, focusing on variable versus fixed resources to give yourself flexibility and maneuverability, tapping into resources you didn't know you had or you didn't know you needed, and leveraging technology to automate what you can. And we're going to run it pretty much like a chat, so the discussion may evolve in other directions. We also really encourage you, if you have anecdotes to share or questions to ask, at any point during the presentation, please jump in. And the way to do that is using the chat button on the right that Rebecca talked about. And then, if you can either do it as a chat, or if you want to speak, Rebecca can unmute you. And with that, I'll move on to the next slide, which is just explaining what my company is. So France Home Finance started in 2004. I come from a banking background in consumer finance, so I was working in developing any kind of loan products for consumers, auto, credit cards, and mortgages all over the world. And I decided in France to launch my own company, and so we started as a mortgage broker. Most people know what that is, but it's not in every country yet. So this is essentially, rather than you yourself going to a bank and asking for a loan to buy a home, It can be time consuming because of course you want to get the best deal, so you might want to visit 4 or even 5 banks to see who has the best rate and the best conditions. You can go see a mortgage broker to do that job for you. So that's what we do. Our clients come to us and say, here's my project to buy a house or apartment. And then I go to the French banks and figure out who is the client eligible to borrow with and what are the best conditions. And there's an added element because we focus on international buyers and often non-resident buyers. So these are people that are then going to be coming to the French banks to apply with documents that may not be in French, that may not be understood by a French bank. So that's the added value is language help and also cultural help when applying for a mortgage to get the best deal. So that's what we do. How do we get our clients? They come to us in a multiple different ways. So direct marketing is a big one. Our website, Google Ads, and sometimes affiliation ads. And then we've, over the years, built up a network of introducers. So these can be lawyers, estate agents, developers, financial advisors that know that their clients need help and they know about us, so they'll send them to us. And we figure out what the client's project is, and we qualify it, and then we, in turn, send it to the French banks. We're paid both by the client and by the bank. And that's pretty much in a nutshell. And I guess it's important to note as well that sometimes, depending on where the lead will come from, we then pay the introducer. And so with that, I will pass it on to Olivier.
Thank you, Tamina. Hello to all of you from Istanbul, Marseille, Paris, Bucharest, Zurich, Nice, Milan. We are very impressed and happy to be with you. What about being an entrepreneur? Sorry. Well, the question as it is asked can be morphed into another one. What is an entrepreneur?
Olivier, I'm
Why
terribly
that?
sorry
Because
to
in
interrupt
fact,
you. Olivier, I'm terribly sorry to interrupt you. There's somebody who has dialed in just via the telephone, not via the internet, and there's a lot of background noise. If that person could please press #6 on their telephone keypad, just to avoid any interruption on the call. Okay, thanks.
okay. So the real question is, because an entrepreneur is something, is I would say a profile which is so diverse that you can't really sum up all the characteristics. I prefer to ask the question about entrepreneurship as a process. Entrepreneurial process being possibly implemented by an individual or team, and I insist on that point. Entrepreneurship is truly a living, dynamic process, meaning that this process can be, I would say, analyzed into different stages. The first one is about identifying the opportunity, something which seems to be obvious, but very often the entrepreneurs have some intuition. They have a gut feeling regarding the field or the blank in the market they feel they could fill with a new venture. And this is really something which is, I would say, quite irrational. In itself, it's very often something that is more about an emotional perception than a precise concept and something which is already articulated. The key issue then is to be able to share and communicate about this feeling of an opportunity. And for this reason, it's important to have in mind a second stage, which is the ability to assess the opportunity. This is a key point. Why? Because when you have a vision, when you have really a perception of something which is interesting to be done in the market, be it a product, be it a new process, etc. If you are not able to share this vision with other partners, be they suppliers, partners, investors, etc., etc., you're running the risk of having this vision alone. And you all know that having a vision alone is like having an hallucination. So in order to, I would say, be able to be recognized as such, the entrepreneur needs really to share. And for this, he needs to, or she needs to build a business case or business plan, something which demonstrates the economic viability of the idea of the business in order to convince people and to, I would say, be quite sure that they will join on board of your project. This is something which is also a trap, and this is interesting because there is certainly a difficulty to shift from this stage 2, assessing, to stage 3, which is capturing the opportunity. Why? Because the very trap is to focus too much on the evaluation phase and to spend a lot of time, refining your business case, writing your business plan, playing with Excel, etc., etc. And this is certainly a trap for the entrepreneur that can prevent her from, I would say, grabbing the business and making some steps ahead. For this reason, capturing is, of course, an essential part of being an entrepreneur and being able to really implement the opportunity to make it real. All the 3 stages, if I just stop here with these 3 steps, identifying, assessing, and capturing the opportunity, are not enough to describe the entrepreneurial process. For instance, a marketing guy in a large company, he's performing in a certain way the same kind of thing. Is defining the segment, assessing the volume of the potential market, and building a marketing mix in order to capture the segment. In fact, to be entrepreneurial, the process of the 3 stages has to, I would say, integrate a new dimension. All these stages are being implemented without taking into account the current state of available resources. And this is a major part of the definition of the entrepreneurial process. To put it, I would say, bluntly, entrepreneurship is about to be opportunity-driven, not budget-driven. The starting point of an entrepreneur is not the available resources he would allocate, I would say, the most smartly. It's about being able to have in mind the goal, the vision, and then to think about the resources in a creative way. And this is, to me, the very difference between an entrepreneur, an independent entrepreneur, and I would say a traditional manager in an already existing organization. Resources are really, I would say, the box in which we are usually trapped in. And when we think about thinking out of the box, I would say that the box is the resource box. Too much often, people are taking it at a starting point, and in fact, that's the opportunity, which is the first thing to have in mind. Well, Tamina, what do you think about all these elements? Does it ring a bell to you?
Definitely. In fact, it makes me think of a story that I didn't share with you yet.
Great.
Not being stopped by your resources. So when we first started the business, I actually had a business before the mortgages for international buyers, and that was debt consolidation for French people. And I was working in a bank, and at the time I realized that this was a huge business opportunity, that nobody was doing it on the internet, and that there was really something to be done. And at the time I wasn't fluent in French, so that was a problem. I didn't really know how to run a company in France. That was another problem. But I also had nothing to lose. So I think the first thing is, when you know you want to accomplish something, tell everybody a very specific thing, what it is you're trying to accomplish. So I remember telling friends that I want to test this out. I'm going to need an office. I'm going to need a telephone line. I need to get a website going. What do you think? And out of telling everybody, our first office space ended up being in a building that was going to be condemned out in the suburbs, but it was a free office space because until it was torn down, there was a completely working office infrastructure in there, and nobody needed it for 9 months. So we set up in there, and the next thing was we put an ad in one of those newspapers that people hand out at the metro stations, saying, you know, do you have too much debt? We can help lower your interest rate. And the phone started to ring, and that, I think, so the whole start to the venture ended up costing about 500 euros total. And then another friend said they would help me answer the phones until my French got up to speed. And there's no motivation to learn a language than having the telephone ring all day long and having to try to sell in French. So all of it came together really quickly, and I think it involves a little bit of craziness to do that. But if you tell yourself, you know, I've got nothing to lose and you don't have to put much money into it, I think there are a lot of ways where you can really, you know, get your idea going.
Sure, and that's very interesting because, in fact, very often entrepreneurs are afraid of sharing their ideas. You know, they believe that they will be stolen, and that will, in a certain way, make them weaker in front of competition. On the opposite, I do believe that, you know, everyone has always a lot of very, very interesting ideas. The difference is between those who have only ideas and those who really take a step in order to implement them. So I like very much this idea of sharing the project, the vision, because it will be a means for you, as Tamina just told us, to, in a certain way, plant seeds in the soil, and you will certainly be surprised of the unexpected feedbacks from friends, from family, from potential suppliers, etc., etc. It's much more like a snowball that you will, in a certain way, push. At the first, it's small, but step by step, it can really grow bigger and bigger, and sharing the idea is certainly a very good means to increase the value of your project. What about the other resources you had in mind, Tamina? Because resources very often is connected to money, but there are a lot of different resources, in fact.
Absolutely. There's a couple examples that come to mind, and again, in talking to others about what you need, one of the things that we did early on, so after the abandoned office building, we moved into an incubator, and we met lots of other entrepreneurs, but we could only stay there for 18 months as we were building our business at a very low cost. And so I needed a new office space for my team, and I knew the other people were in the same boat. So we ended up doing a bit of co-working, which is a big trend right now, but back in 2007, nobody was talking about it. Essentially, we pooled together to rent an office space, and the fact that we, you know, were multiple people doing it together, we were able to have a much nicer space and a much more, let's say, professional-looking office space than we would have had we done it alone. And then building on this, I sensed an opportunity because I thought, okay, there's lots of people that have this problem. They don't have the cash flow to put up 6 months of rent in a blocked account and all of this. And in 2010, I ended up buying an office, totally renovating it, and sharing it with multiple companies, and that was our first kind of personal co-working space, and it ended up actually paying for itself. So that meant that our company got almost free rent, and the other companies got a really nice space to work in. And on top of that, you have now this group of entrepreneurs showing up for work every day rather than alone in their own apartment, which is often the case, and sharing ideas, sharing resources, creating a real energy, which you need. It's very hard to start a company and to remain motivated and energized, and that was also a nice outcome.
It's a very nice example of sharing something again, and in that case, what I found very interesting is the fact that the thing that Tahminae shared was a problem. So sharing a problem with other people that are confronted to the same problem is a very good means to let emerge unexpected solutions and shared solutions. That's the first point. The second point that struck me in this story is this very true remark regarding being alone in launching one's own business, and the energy and fueling the energy is certainly one of the big, I would say, parameter to take into account when being an entrepreneur. Very often all the people that are part of our family or friends are not necessarily supporting, and we know that there are a lot of obstacles on the way. So being able to share, being able to, I would say, produce some new energy in some common and shared projects is certainly an excellent way of, I would say, having a nice driving engine inside oneself. This story also just opened maybe a new dimension of being open to, I would say, the unexpected and the environment. In the relations with other kind of partners. Here we talked about entrepreneurs that were sharing the same issues, but I do believe, Tahminae, that you also tapped into resources that were maybe part of some potential partners' property.
Definitely. Two things that were surprising to me as I was on this journey were how you could share resources with introducers. So these are people that, you know, would bring business to me, and also the competition. They ended up being both amazing sources of you know, things that we needed for our company growth. And the first example is it was one of the first companies that we worked with. They were an apartment finder in Paris called Flat Hunter. And their role was to, you know, someone comes to Paris, it's extremely difficult to know what is actually for sale because there's no central listing, and there's quite a lot that you know, it's very time intensive. You have to visit literally 100 agencies in one neighborhood and hope that they're actually showing you what's really for sale. So they were doing this for international buyers who didn't have the time to do it themselves. They were finding the property, and then they would send them to us to do the financing. And whenever they had a new client, the first thing they would do is say, call Tahminae and get pre-approved for a mortgage, because that often was what they needed to do to set their actual budget and know what purchase price they could afford. And this happened, we worked together like this for 4 years or so, and you know, various crises hit and they had to downsize on their staff, and because the international side was just a small part of the business, the person that spoke English ended up leaving. So my introducer now had a problem. He couldn't do any sales. And the solution that seemed obvious to both of us was, well, since I'm practically the first person that the clients are talking to anyways, why don't I just sell their service at the same time? And that ended up working out on many fronts for both of us. So for my partner, he now didn't have the cost of that employee, and he had all the flexibility because you know, it was just he sends the leads to me and I do the best to convert them that I could. For me, I had a better chance of converting these leads into clients because I had them from the start to the end of the process. Let's talk about what your project is to buy. Let's talk about the financing that you need. And it didn't take that much more time. And I was saving having to pay any kind of an introducer fee if I converted a client. So this was good for the introducer, good for me, and the clients were happy because the whole thing became really seamless and a much better level of service.
I remember also, Tahminae, when we talked first time about your business, that you told me something very, at first sight, at least very weird regarding your competitors, and I was very impressed by the kind of relations apparently you managed to build with them.
Right. So this, and I'm telling you kind of the details because I don't want to make it seem like this is, you know, so easy and you're just automatically going to suddenly become friends with your competitors. But it was very simply that because we work with a lot of French banks, they have events for their partners, and so after a while you go to these events and you see the same faces. you have a lot of time to chat. And what I want to encourage you to do is get to know these people, even though if they are your competitors, they have the same problems as you do. So going back to sharing the problems, one of the things that I would say is, look, I've got a legal problem. Do you have any good lawyers that are specialized in particularly this subject? How about recruitment? I need to hire somebody. What are the websites that work the best for you? Things that are not a threat. You're not asking them for any secrets. You're not going to take anything from them by asking, but that they, can share in a friendly way. And then that opens the door for them to come to you later when they need something. And so over the years, they've, because we'll get into this later, but I ended up outsourcing a lot of things over the years more and more. And these are the people that I go to when I want to know, who is a good SEO, web marketing company, who's a good IT person that can make my website mobile friendly. These are the people that I call now.
Tahminae, we just had a question in from Juliet, who's listening in on the call, and she's asking, what about involving your competition? I think you did just touch on that there, but if there's anything else you'd like to add for Juliet.
Just to really not be, thanks Juliet, just to don't be afraid, because you do get of course competitive when you look at your stats and you look at your rankings on the website, on the web engines, to see are you ahead of them or not. And if you lose a client to the competitor, you kind of think to yourself, that one should have been mine. But just be ready to put that aside in the category of fair play, and reach out and make friends, because I can guarantee you they'll be really happy to make that professional friendship with you and to share the information. Yeah, actually, so one of the things that we wanted to do was just really give you all a heads up. Start thinking about, we're going to talk a little bit longer about various resources, anecdotes, but really start thinking about any questions that you have now and any stories that you want to share, because I think some of you might be entrepreneurs yourself, and we would love to hear any creative ways that you've managed your resources. So that'll happen in about 10 minutes from now, so just wanted to give you a warning. Yeah. Okay. So with that, I think we're going to switch to another topic, Olivier, that you introduced me to that I think is fascinating, and that's bartering for resources.
Yes, right. We talked a lot about scarcity of resources, and you have understood that for an entrepreneur, there is nothing such something like scarce resources, because the entrepreneur can, I would say, apply her creativity on this topic. And first we have the opportunity and then the resources. There is a very interesting means that can be used now. It was firstly developed at the beginning of the 2005, but did not really grow, I would say, sufficiently. But it's now back in town and very powerful. It's about bartering. For those who are living in Paris, there is, for instance, a very nice startup called France Barter, and I do believe that there is the equivalent in Italy and other countries. The principle is very simple, in fact. You've got a platform, and you've got different players producing goods or services, and the idea is that you can, in fact, bargain and exchange your goods or services against other goods or services of other players that are part of the platform, using a kind of artificial currency in order to homogenize the different materials. What is very powerful is that you have here the ability to minimize the use of cash, and we know that cash is king in the entrepreneurial venture. So for this reason, you can put some part of your valuable production on the platform and exchange it against other goods you're interested in. Depending on the kind of platforms you are joining, they will ask for more or less maturity of your business. But the principle is here, and it's quite powerful. The basic idea is really to be able to, I would say, minimize cost and leverage in a certain way the ability to do things. And that's really something which is, when you bear it in mind, which is very powerful for an entrepreneur. I do believe that, Tamina, you have some example regarding this approach of minimizing cost, and especially, I would say, playing on the difference between variable and fixed costs, the idea being minimizing the fixed cost, of course.
Right, absolutely. And this was one of the key lessons in the workshop that Olivier gave 10 years ago, and it's what has stayed with me ever since. And it's what saved me, because in those 10 years we had the subprime crisis, we had the Lehman Brothers banking crisis, we had the Euro crisis. There, all kinds of things have happened. And just when we start making headway and really growing, there's something that has affected my business and caused it to shrink. And so having the majority of my expenses as variable versus fixed has been vital to staying in business, where I've seen, unfortunately, some of the others in the same market go out of business. And just to give you some examples that will apply to other markets, not necessarily the financial services, if you have a machinery that you need and you can avoid actually owning it, and that's really going to, it's more of an opportunity today more than ever, which is fantastic. Lease it or rent it if you can. Going back to the office space example, rather than signing a commercial lease yourself that, at least in France, it locks you in for 3 years, and usually an enormous amount of deposit, try to see if you can sublet from somebody else. I had a friend who was launching a restaurant, but before he wanted to really start to sign up for all the machinery that was required, he did a food cart to test the concept. So I thought that was really brilliant in terms of keeping it small, and he rented it from somebody that already had a food cart and used it when the other person didn't need it. So that was really quite good. In my business, the biggest cost is manpower, because we're in the services business. And so over the years, we've moved from having salaried employees, because it's really difficult, especially in France, to expand and contract your business when you have full-time employees, as is needed, without burning your cash. If you're a small business, it's okay if you're a bit larger, but as a small business, you don't have the resources to pay people what they deserve contractually if you have to let them go. And so a way to do that is to outsource, to work with independent people for the various functions that you need. And that also is a big trend now. You have more and more people that are moving to independence platforms, and there's lots of platforms out there where you can now find people with the specific expertise that you need. And that's been fantastic for us.
Yeah, this is really a very powerful principle, and that's a piece of advice to bear it in mind. That's, I would say, maybe the first resource of an entrepreneur, to have this bartering principle in mind. You can do it with the competencies, you can do it with the goods, you can do it with time, etc., etc. And in that sense, I would say that every entrepreneur has a lot of resources, some of them being hidden, and I like the metaphor of our two arms, two hands. Very often we are either left-handed or mostly right-handed, and in fact we've got two hands, and I would say that a lot of the resources we have are part of our I would say environment, and very often they are hidden, and when you discover them, you are very powerful. If I can give some name of the platform entrepreneurs can use. The first one is very easy to find. It's France Barter. and you will see that it's very easy to find on Google. My piece of advice here is to Google bartering, the name of your country, and the word startup, and you will see that there are plenty of them, and they are very specific, sometimes specialized in some size of the companies being part of the platform, depending of a lot of parameters. But it's really worth contacting them and I would say calling them, because do not hesitate to talk with the guys. They can indicate if they do not fit to your demand. They can give you other very valuable recommendations. They are very creative, in fact, but they are developing their business also. So maybe your needs, your specific needs, will be an opportunity for them to expand and develop their business. In France, for instance, you have also an association that developed this kind of approach for very small companies, for I would say standalone entrepreneurs, and the name of the association is BGE, BGE, meaning boutique de gestion, and it's very powerful. I'm quite sure that in Europe there are a lot of similar examples. Just to be back on this dimension of hidden resources, I know, Tahminae, that on the way of creating and developing your business, you were surprised to discover this kind of resources in you or in your near environment, in different I would say sectors.
Absolutely. You know, one of the biggest surprises was in my own home. I was once we got up and rolling and you know, had our website and we were getting quite a few leads, we needed to put into place some kind of a customer relationship management system. And my husband works in IT services for the banks. That was where he started his career. So I was asking his advice on which software package I should buy. I had researched it and found 3 or 4 different ones, and just wanted to figure out which one I should actually implement. And he said, actually it's not that complicated to build what you need, so why don't I do that for you? And that was just a beautiful surprise, and ended up being lots of fun for him, and a big help to our company. And the other thing that I talked about earlier was, the surprise resources was also the competition. I would have never in the first 4 years thought about going to the competition to find help, but the last 6 years, that's been really an important part for me. And I think also this example of the IT platform that my husband built, so I guess the key of the story there is, again, telling everybody specifically what it is, the problem you need to solve. That was a very specific problem, and I went to someone I knew that had general knowledge in that area, and it ended up being a huge opportunity that I would have never guessed. So that's the thing I want you to remember there. And then going on to technology, this is something that I think is another resource that you must exploit as much as you can in terms of automating. If there's anything you can automate in your business, really be thinking in terms of, always looking, what are the repetitive things that we do day in and day out? Is there technology? Is there software? Is there a way to do it? And it can be as simple as a spreadsheet, but the things that you do on a repeat basis, that the resource is your time, or paying someone else's time, and you can save that when you automate. And the system that my husband built, he ended up going on to create a billing system, a lead qualification system, and a client communication system, and eventually that took the place of 3 full-time employees over the years. So that's ended up being really important to us.
Yeah, what strikes me here is also the fact that even for an entrepreneur, it can be very valuable to think in terms of process. Entrepreneur has really 2 dimensions. The first has to do with creativity and I would say sometimes creative chaos. But on the other side, in order to be efficient, it can be very important to bear in mind that formalizing some of the repeated actions you're just undertaking is a really guarantee of saving time and money.
So just to go back to Sarah with your question about the platforms, there is another platform in terms of finding people with specific functional expertise that I can't think of the URL. So what I'll do is perhaps send an email out to all the participants after. I'll look that up offline and get back to you on that one. And I think at this point, we'd like to open it up to any questions or any stories that you want to share yourselves. And Rebecca, perhaps you could help us with any, muting or unmuting that needs to be done.
Yeah, sure. If anybody would just like to drop me a quick chat line in the GoToMeeting chatter box on the right hand of your screen, just to let me know that you want to speak live on air, that would be great.
Or another thing that could be kind of fun is if anyone is or has an ongoing business and you have a resource that is a really significant cost for you and you just want to do a bit of a brainstorm. That was one of the exercises we did with Olivier in the workshop, and I'm not sure how it'll work on this platform, but we can try it. It could be fun. In terms of getting everyone's input, how can you take a fixed cost and make it variable, or how can you make it lighter by using resources you may not know you have?
While we're waiting for somebody to come through there, Tahminae, I'd just like to share a story of what we're doing at the federation level at the moment with PWN Global. So we recently discovered a platform called Elance, which I'm sure lots of you are familiar with. It was completely new to us. And Elance allows you to solicit freelance graphic design artists from around the world, which means that you can end up paying a much lower cost for a really good quality product. And if you want, for example, in our instance, we just wanted some really nicely designed PowerPoint slides. And whilst most of us have got decent PowerPoint skills, we wanted to take it to that next level and have something designed. Well, ordinarily to do that in our local market in France, it was very expensive. By going to Elance, we managed to work with somebody who was based in the States, who was able to take on that one piece of freelance work, and it took them a day of work, and we paid a minimal price for it. And it's not an ongoing fixed cost of having to employ a graphic design artist, which, if you're looking to get your business off the ground and you want a slick offering, quite often you do need that sort of support. So I'd recommend Elance as well.
And while you were mentioning that, that's a great one. Thank you, Rebecca. The email that I was looking for with my websites just popped up on my phone. So here I'm just sharing in the chat. Here are some of the other ones that are useful, like Odesk and Freelance.
Great. Okay, we still don't seem to have any callers coming forward to share their experiences just yet.
Yeah. What I can add is what Tamina referred to is, I would say, the usual bad surprise at the end of defining the business plan, which is the way you will calculate the needs for of money to be invested in your business in order to make it happen. And very often it's a huge sum of money, and so there is very often a kind of a wave of despair saying, well, it's too much, I do not have the resources. A good exercise here is to ask oneself the question, what will be the use of such amount of money? And if you do a kind of analysis going through the different allocations you have in mind, you certainly will be able to isolate different uses of this money and be ready to see whether you have other means to get to the same results. For instance, we saw the example of renting a space. So you need money to rent a space, but maybe you can have access to the space through another means. I remember that some students of mine, for instance, they did exchange the access to a room in a very luxury office, proposing to the owners to take in charge their IT systems, because my students were experts in IT system. So it can be a nice way to alleviate the barrier of money in order to be able to, let's say, to manage, to really launch the business.
Okay, we've had a question. We've had a question come through from Sarah, who's on the phone with us. So, do you mind if I open her up so she can speak to you directly?
Sure.
Yep.
Sure.
Okay, I'm going to unmute you, Sarah. Can you hear us?
Okay.
Hi, Sarah.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Hi.
Yes.
Hi, Sarah.
Hello?
Okay. Yeah, so I'm just going to recap. So you're in wrought iron and office management, and interested in, besides the billing, what else could you automate? And then further to that, lead automation and client communication. And then maybe I'm not sure what the question is on the. I can comment on what else can you automate, but perhaps I'll let you finish your question in terms of the lead automation.
I wanted to know the process that you went through, what questions you asked yourself to automate the task.
Oh, right, okay. Well, this goes back to my previous career where I was working in quality for General Electric. I was a Six Sigma black belt, if any of you have ever heard that terminology. And my job was to go into the various departments and the various businesses, map the processes that each person did, and then figure out how to optimize it and make it, reliable and efficient and successful. And there is a very easy tool that anybody can apply to your business, and that's just whatever the key functions that you have in the company. So in my company, for example, it's the mortgage broker, so it's the person who takes the lead on the internet, calls the person, figures out what bank they can qualify for and quotes them. And then we have the mortgage assistant who then, when the client decides to apply for a particular product, they have to ask the client for lots of documents, organize it, package it, translate it. There's different things you do to prepare it for the bank, send it to the bank. So these are two roles. And what we did in our company and what I did previously is I just sat down for half a day to everybody doing that job and said, at the beginning of the day, when you have a client or a particular process, what's step one, what's step two, what's step three? And you end up with a list of typically 10 to 30 steps of what people actually do. And then what you can do as a group, when you get everybody in the company, because you want some people that aren't in the process to give you some fresh perspective, you label each step as a value-added thing to do, a non-value added, value enabling, meaning it doesn't add any value, but you have to do it to get to the next stage, or automate. Whereas an opportunity, it's something that you do all the time, and that's something that, you don't need a human being necessarily to do. Maybe you can automate it. So this is how we identified the priority things in our business that should be automated, because of course, there's always, if cash is limitless, there's lots of things you can do. But the really quick way to get to it is just to do that exercise in terms of the key roles and processes in your business.
Okay.
Was any of that clear? Anything I can expand upon?
Yeah, it just needs a concrete example to be clearer. But I understand the idea about the listing the steps and then putting the value added, non-value added, and the value enabling in the automation.
Well, and I can give you an example of the non-value added, because sometimes that's really up for discussion. And one of the things, we were doing is once we got a whole file together, we were making 2 physical copies of it, one for the archive and I forget what the other reason was we were doing 2 of them. But it was something that took the person, because we were dealing with 200-page things, it took them a good half hour to 45 minutes in some cases. And that was something we really, started saying, well, why exactly are we doing that? Is there a better way to do it?
Okay. Thank you very much.
And Julie, I'm just reading your question now. You're welcome. Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, absolutely. So Julie just, confirming that it makes sense to engage with everyone around you, and you'll be surprised with the support that you get back. It's beautiful actually when you can clearly tell the world what it is you need. The return you get back is wonderful.
Tahminae, we've also had a question through, or an example through from, hold on a second, from Suniva, but she sent it to me personally, so I'll just read it out to you. So she puts, sharing experience with bartering. We're a group of 3 coaches who are setting up an associate business. We are paying, in inverted commas, with coaching, and so far have received services on logo creation, professional photographing and IT services. It's great. So she's really using the bartering model that Olivier spoke about earlier on.
Well, that's very impressive, and it's a very, very nice example, and it's a source of inspiration. Thanks a lot for sharing this.
Okay, well, if there are no more questions or comments at this point, let's see how I can get back to the slide. I'm just going to recap what we've talked about today. So what does it mean to be an entrepreneur? Which I loved hearing about, by the way, from Olivier, because sometimes you do these things and it's hard to put a name on your way of thinking or what you're doing, and that was really nice to hear it summarized in that way.
Thanks, Tamina.
We talked about sharing resources with third parties that need the same resources, focusing on your variable costs and minimizing your fixed costs, tapping into resources that you didn't imagine you had, and leveraging technology to automate whatever repetitive things that you are doing. So thank you all for coming today and listening and sharing, and best of luck if any of you are in your own ventures or thinking about starting a venture. And thank you, Rebecca, and thanks to the network for having us.
Thanks a lot to everyone. It was really very exciting, and I was very pleased to be part of it. Thanks.
Tahminae and Olivier, thank you very much for the time that you've given up today. Everybody on the phone probably knows this already, but the people who host these webinars do it on a voluntary basis, and we thank you enormously for sharing your expertise. Without people like you, we wouldn't be able to share this knowledge. So just for the purpose of the recording, if anybody listening in on today's recording is interested in getting involved in delivering a webinar or has an idea that they would like to see us address for a webinar, then please be in touch. You can address your emails to community@pwnglobal.net. Once again, thank you to our hosts today. You can see their details on the screen there now.
And if anyone has any questions for either of us, please feel free to contact us. We'd be very happy to continue the discussion.
That's super. Thank you very much. Have a great afternoon, everybody.
Thanks, Rebecca.